Hello, everybody. It's time for the 4 p.m. report after show, also known as Thirsty Thursday. Susan is off today, so I was going to do this solo, but then I had a great idea for someone to come on and chat with me, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I wanted to introduce my guest for our little 10-minute video here, Megan O'Neill, business mindset strategist and coach. Hi, Megan. How are you today?
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. So, Megan, first, I don't even have a cocktail or anything. I have some.
I know. I
Cheers.
know. Here,
Cheers, Megan. There we go. So first we started off by talking about the episode of the 4 a.m. Report, our podcast that went out today at 4 a.m. We spoke to Laurel Carr. She has a company called Impagination. And what we spoke about was Kolbe, Kolbe. Kolbe is a test that you take, an assessment tool you take, and it can really help teams because what it doesn't assess personality type or that sort of thing. It assesses how you take action. Some people might be great at the ideas and the quick starters. Some people are great with follow through. Some people are great with the research. It basically, identifies your zone of genius and empowers you to know that this is your zone of genius and doesn't make you feel bad if you're not as apt in the other categories. And it's a great way for teams to understand each other's strengths, to communicate better, to work more efficiently, especially right now, Megan, when who knows where we're working from, right? And the anxieties and the stresses we're all feeling. It is a lovely tool. My whole team did it, and I found it really helpful. I think everyone found it really helpful as a team building exercise and as a way to really figure out what your zone of genius is and own it. So everyone check that out. I'll put the link to the podcast in the first comment below. But now on to the topic of what I'm thirsty for this week. So usually we talk about, what's going on in marketing news or pop culture. But today I wanted to talk about a mindset issue that I've been feeling, Megan, and I think a lot of people have. It's that feeling of guilt, right? Guilt that I'm going to go home to see my mom tomorrow and maybe I am infected right now. Guilt of maybe not social distancing right. Parents are feeling guilty if they sent their kids to school and now maybe worrying about that. Guilty if they didn't send their kids to school and now feel they're depriving their kid of something. And even, Megan, the topic of, I had a pretty good summer. I enjoyed my summer. I feel guilty saying that because there was so much misery in the world, in Canada, in the United States this summer. So what I realized today with all the cases rising and everything, one of the main mindset issues I'm having that's affecting me and my way I'm working is guilt. So I knew immediately you were the person I wanted to have on to sub in for Susan. So talk to me about this. I'm sure you've spoke to many people about this in the past, especially now.
I mean, it's one of the main things I talk to people about, period. And, I grew up with guilt. Guilt was like a big part of my family culture. And my husband always jokes that it's the Irish Catholic guilt, but I wish it were just my own ethnic group, that's my own, religion that suffered from this, because that's not true. I think every single person on the earth in one form or another suffers from guilt. There's very few. But the one thing that I always ask my clients to keep in mind, and I think this is something that everybody needs to understand, is that guilt is not natural. It's not something that you're born with. So if you kind of observe little kids and, I keep thinking about when I was a kid and I was running around naked and, I was at the cottage, I was running around naked. Yeah. And then I had my Aunt Pat, who shamed me about it.
Right.
I experienced guilt. Now, I didn't even understand, and once again, this is like a cultural belief about nudity. If I'm on the beach with a bunch of Germans, I'm probably not going to have my Auntie Pat give me that sort of business, right? And so guilt is something that we learn at a really young age. Right. And it is, most important, it's man-made. This is not something that little 4-year-olds experience naturally. Right. And if you look at different cultures, just like thinking about the Scandinavians and the Germans walking around buck naked, they're not feeling guilty. They're making people feel uncomfortable. There's a completely different belief system,
right?
Around sex, around money, you name it. There's all these different beliefs about those subjects. And some people feel guilty, whereas other people would look at you and say, well, why are you feeling guilty?
Right.
So I feel like if there's anything that I want to convey to people, is just to understand that guilt is not real unless you make it real. Now, that's easier said than done, because obviously we're programmed as really young kids that we're supposed to feel guilty about things. And I do think it's a method of control, which is what really bugs me about it. Like, that's what really irks me about it,
Right.
is that often it's used as a way to kind of control people, as it was, I think, in religious traditions often.
Right.
And so, what I want everybody to just start thinking about, other than the fact that it's man-made, is that when you feel guilty, first of all, is there a benefit to it? Like, if you're feeling guilty about feeling happy in a time period where there's so much unhappiness and there's so much tension, and particularly, I think, because we are Canadians.
For sure. I feel very Canadian with all of this guilt and worry and not feeling
Yeah.
like a good enough person right now. Yeah.
Yeah, because our country's looking pretty good for the most part, like in a bigger way in terms of democracy and all that sort of thing. But I think that around you and myself being happy or feeling grateful, I mean, that's all positive feelings. Feeling guilty around, what I think about with myself is that I'm getting really frustrated having my kids at home. Like, I'll be honest about it. Now, I can feel guilty about that. Like, what kind of mother, resents the fact that her kids are at home? Well, probably a lot of mothers.
Right.
And so what's the value of me feeling guilty? There's not a lot of value to it, but it's just an old program. This is what
so identifying, I hear what you're saying, and that's very logical. But yet the emotional side of me is not going to listen to that logical side, I know. And I do know that this guilt that's building up in me is affecting my ability to focus right now. And it's like I can't focus. My mind keeps darting to different things, and it's been this week specifically. So what, for people who are hearing what you're saying, what are some techniques, or how can I check myself, or how can I lessen this anxiety?
Well, guilt is pretty sneaky, right? Because it's sneaky because you're identifying it as a feeling. But the way we look at things as a belief specialist is that everything is preceded by a belief. So if I feel guilty, that's a feeling, but underneath the feeling is a belief. So what I would ask you to do is to just think, like, what is it about this that on a deeper level, and I say deeper as in, usually when you feel something constantly, like guilt, there's often a belief underneath it. And so it's about doing a little bit of an excavation, which we can do on our own by noticing that we're feeling the guilt, and then asking ourselves, what is it that I'm feeling guilty about right now? And really digging into what is that? Because when you even if you write things down, which is what I tend to do because I'm visual in that sense, and then I look at, well, I feel guilty because often what you see written down on a piece of paper, or even if you're talking to someone, if you're not a writer, you'll notice it's kind of wacky in some ways. Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And so the more that you're reinforcing that it doesn't make sense, or that it's man-made, or that it really doesn't have any value, you're not going to be more of a influential person in the world by feeling guilty. And I think what I have noticed with guilt, Will, is that people often think that the value in guilt is prompting you to take action. That if there was one value, like if I feel guilty about the fact that I'm happy, then that will make me go and volunteer more. Well, can't you volunteer without doing the guilt before it?
Yeah. You know what? Someone said something too that helped me a little bit when I was deciding to cancel plans tonight with friends, because I am going home to see my mom. I just, as much as I want to support local restaurants and sit on their patio with my friends, I made the decision because I was feeling this sense of anxiety and guilt. But my friend was like, you know what? Everyone right now needs to do what's right for them. Like, follow the rules we're supposed to follow, but you need to say what's right for you, Will, isn't right for me, Megan, in this moment. And I think that helped me a little bit too, saying, like, don't compare yourself with what other decisions other people are making. What's right for you? That helped me a little bit as well.
Oh, I think that's great. And I think there is a certain amount of that right now, that we do really have to take care of ourselves. Because the bigger picture is that if you're feeling run down, if you're feeling negative, that doesn't really help the world in general or the people that you love.
Yeah, it's true. Very true. Megan, I do have to end because we keep our videos kind of short for this, but for people who want to find out more maybe about what you do, where can people check you out and find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn under Megan O'Neill, or you can just go to my website, meganoneil.ca, because I'm Canadian, so it's CA instead of com.
And find out. We're proud to be that Canadian, aren't we? Yeah. Well, Megan, thank you very much. Have a lovely afternoon. Thanks for joining me. You were a great substitute for Susan today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Will.
Okay.